I made my video for Stellar Conduct and how it's so broken, so now it's time to talk about Stellar Swirl, as well as one of the greatest comebacks in Genshin's meta history being Mizuki. Hello there, Flip here, and we're just going to be doing a team analysis on Stellar Swirl, explaining how it works, and the team building philosophy behind it, which kind of doesn't exist right now, and then discussing how good the teams are shaping up to be. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video you are entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to all my lovely channel members, I really appreciate your support, it means the world to me. And I know that we, yes, you and me, are all excited to see Mizuki become the best Onamo DPS. And there's no sponsor for today's video, so let's just get right into it. And we're going to start off this video by not recapping, because I haven't explained Stellar Swirl on this channel yet. And I'm also curious because I got a lot of comments about it. Does anyone find it helpful that I recap Stellar Conduct every single time? I'm not doing it for the people that know about it, I'm doing it just in case anyone is like new to the game or coming back to the game, and Stellar Conduct is like a new reaction, so just so they're more eased into knowing what I'm talking about. But I guess like it's in the game now, so if no one finds it useful, I'll just stop talking about it every single video. But now Stellar Swirl actually functions quite differently to Stellar Conduct. Instead of creating a field, whenever you apply Onamo onto Cryo and Cryo only, and you have a Stellar Conduct enabler in your team, which the characters that can enable Stellar Swirl are going to be Cryo main character, Sandrone, as well as Odette. When you trigger a Cryo Swirl, one of two things is going to happen. The first is that your Cryo characters are going to deal Stellar Swirl reaction damage, and this is going to be an enhanced swirl that factors in not only your elemental mastery stats but your crit as well, and the Cryo characters on your team that applied Cryo when this swirl happened are also able to contribute to the total reaction damage and make it stronger. So it is group-oriented reaction damage based on your crit and elemental mastery, in the same way that Lunar Crystallize and Lunar Charged are. And like with Lunar reaction damage, the game will calculate individually how much the swirl damage would have been, add it all together, and the characters that would have done more damage contribute more to the final reactions damage. But alongside the swirl damage, when you swirl, a vortex is going to be created, and after 3 seconds it's going to explode and do Cryo reaction Stellar Swirl damage. But if you manage to swirl 2 more times before the vortex explodes, this is going to upgrade the damage of the vortex, going from a 2 times to 3 times multiplier. And like with Stellar Swirl, the final reaction damage is going to be based on everyone who contributed to the reaction by applying an element. The only real difference is now a second Onamo character can contribute to the final reaction damage. So you have a Cryo reaction nuke that happens every 3 seconds and can be upgraded with swirls, and also Onamo Stellar Swirl reaction damage that happens every time your Onamo character swirls. So you are going to want to have a lot of Onamo application in your teams, so you're consistently getting an upgraded vortex, as well as triggering more Onamo swirls. And I guess this is the part of the video where we get to talk about Mizuki and how her buffs impact Stellar Swirl teams, as I actually really haven't talked about her buffs at all. Mizuki's reputation in the game hasn't necessarily been the greatest. On release, she was a notoriously not good driver for electrocharged and swirl based teams that would run double Onamo comps, and her utility was being an on-field driver as well as buffing swirl damage while she's on field. It's just that due to her lackluster damage, small buff up time, and relatively small buffs in general, she never really found a competent place in the meta over just using someone like Sucrose as a driver, and her buffs aim to tackle those issues by making her a Stellar Swirl carry instead. She's now also going to boost the damage of Stellar Swirl, which is also going to buff the damage the reaction does directly, and on top of that, from her passive, she's going to give a teammate 100 elemental mastery, and she herself is now going to be able to deal direct Stellar Swirl damage. So Mizuki is now actually going to become a crit direct Stellar Swirl DPS, so you now are going to want to build her on an elemental mastery and crit build. And I guess now is where I start my rant on the artifact sets and the more weird things in this 7.0 beta. Okay, so like I explained with my Odette video, for some reason they're being really restrictive about the artifact sets and weapons. Sandrone has just become a Stellar Swirl DPS, but with the new artifact set, because you need to trigger a swirl reaction, Onamo doesn't have an aura that can be applied, and direct Stellar Swirl damage doesn't count. So Sandrone isn't able to utilize the new artifact set, even though she's both a Stellar Conduct and Stellar Swirl DPS. Odette, who is a sub-DPS that can be played in both Stellar Swirl and Stellar Conduct, with the new craftable weapons that were already inconsistent in Stellar Conduct teams, as you can't guarantee a reaction, you also cannot use this weapon on Odette at all in Stellar Swirl teams, as she cannot trigger the reaction. Oh, and then you might be saying, well, at least Mizuki can use the new artifact set. Well, not really, as they buffed Viridescent to where it now gives a 60% Stellar Swirl damage bonus. And get this, if you deal direct Stellar Swirl damage, this is going to reduce cryo resistance, even if you are a cryo character. So Sandrone has better synergy with the 7-year-old artifact set over the new artifact set that's being made for Stellar Swirl DPSs, because that somehow makes an increment of sense. So Sandrone cannot benefit from the new Craftables at all, basically, in any of her teams, and she now, on Stellar Swirl teams, can't use the new Stellar Swirl set. The Stellar Swirl set isn't even best in slot for Mizuki, even, and she's able to trigger the set. It's just that it's worse than using Viridescent, as now your DPSs can hold Viridescent, and then your supports can use other things to boost the team's damage. So what's the point of the new set and the new craftable weapons if they can't even consistently be used on the characters that are made to take advantage of them? I'm really hoping this gets fixed, but for now, a lot of the older gear is going to be better than the newer stuff, which sucks, because the newer stuff is theoretically stronger. Hoyoverse is just gatekeeping the trigger conditions for some reason. Now, getting into discussing Stellar Swirl team building, the first thing I sadly can't put off any longer is discussing Cryo Traveler, who's very good. To briefly cover the Cryo Traveler's kit, as I want to make a whole video on them in the future, the Cryo Traveler is going to enable both Stellar Swirl and Stellar Conduct, and depending on the reaction you trigger, their kit does have some slight differences. In Stellar Conduct teams, the Traveler is going to primarily be played as an on-field DPS or sub-DPS that does one big nuke before swapping off, and in Stellar Swirl teams, they're also going to do that big nuke and then swap off, but they don't really have on-field capabilities, so they are basically a pure sub-DPS / support in these teams. Most of their damage comes from their special Cryo Charge attack and Burst, both of which do direct Stellar Swirl or Stellar Conduct damage, and their skill is just generic off-field turret hits that doesn't really do that much damage, but helps generate resources for them, and it of course applies cryo. Now this is where things get weird. The Traveler is a free character, but you're only going to be able to get them to Constellation 2 currently, and the rest of their constellations will be unlocked later, so you can't actually have a full potential Traveler right now. They are also going to give Traveler a signature weapon, and when maxed, this signature weapon is cracked. It's going to be a free R5 5-star that's going to give you 40% attack, 42 crit damage, as well as a ton of energy on top of this. But you can't max it out either, so you're going to be stuck with this bare bones version, which is frustrating as he's really good when he's maxed, but otherwise kind of underwhelming. It's a 20% team DPS difference, which is huge. And when he's C6 R5, he's equivalent in supportive capabilities to an Odette, as he just gains more sub DPS damage, as well as a 40% stellar reaction bonus. Now looking at a Mizuki DPS team, that of which is going to be built with Sucrose, Cryo MC, and Odette, even without a maxed Cryo Traveler, these are very good numbers, and unlike Stellar Conduct teams that have had Yai, we don't even really have a premium Stellar Swirl support. Sucrose can never escape being top meta, as the team-wide elemental mastery buffs she provides are simply too good to pass up, and we don't really have good Onimo supports. Stellar Swirl is a team archetype that wants you to do lots of swirls, so that you're able to create more leveled up vortexes, but besides Venti, we don't really have characters that apply a lot of Onimo from off-field. That would also provide other benefits for the team, so again, the natural conclusion is just Sucrose. And I've already discussed what Odette does in length. She's a strong sub DPS and provides a team-wide 60% stellar damage bonus. So here's your premium Stellar Swirl team for right now, in which Mizuki is competing with the likes of Skirk and Mavuika, and right behind the damage of the lunar carries. And if we were to max up the Cryo Traveler, oh my god, forget competing with Mavuika and Skirk. She blows past the rest of the lunar carries besides Zibai. We're assuming you have lost a 50-50 to Mizuki, and pick her up from the standard selector. The only character you have to actively pull for on this team is going to be Odette. And if you thought Sandrone's gameplay was brain dead, Mizuki just taps her skill and stays on field and looks pretty. So for the effort to damage ratio, you're going to be AFKing while having some of the strongest DPS in the game. And if you ever need to panic heal, Mizuki is also a healer, so you can just use her burst at any time. I have no idea what the 7.0 is looking like, but if we're in a reality where Mizuki is now one of the highest DPS teams in the game, I am worried. Now, taking away Odette from the team composition, just to show how strong Stellar Swirl teams can be without it, in this case your replacement is going to be someone like Chi-Chi, as she's going to provide you with a team-wide 50% Stellar Swirl damage bonus when in Stellar Swirl teams. And even though you are taking a pretty big hit from not having Odette, considering that the team is basically completely free, and we're only looking at a C1 Mizuki, I still feel like this is very impressive damage numbers. I feel like it's kind of crazy that we're at a point in Genshin where 100k DPS isn't anything that special anymore, but yes, this is still fine performance. As for other Onimo options you can use, the only other competent Onimo replacement is a C6 Farzan, and even she is still going to be a lot worse than Sucrose. I feel like you're honestly better looking to replace Sucrose in other teams than trying to replace her in Stellar Swirl teams currently. We really need that new Stellar Swirl support, and because Mizuki is a standard 5-star and you may be able to rack up a decent amount of copies for her or choose her from the standard selector, compared to Chi-Chi, she does have some pretty useful constellations all the way up until her C6. I've been using her C1 as the baseline assumption for these teams, in which case it's a 20% DPS increase from C0, and her C1 just provides strong quills to Stellar Swirl damage, on top of giving Mizuki strong Stellar Swirl hits. Mizuki's C2, while looking impressive, sadly isn't that great. The damage bonuses really aren't doing that much in Stellar Swirl teams that don't care about damage bonus really, and 20% res shred just sadly isn't that much, especially on a team that already has VV for the cryo hits, and on top of the fact that these buffs are only active while Mizuki's on field, so things like Odette and Cryo MC's nukes aren't going to get buffed by the res shred. And from C3 to C5 Mizuki, nothing really changes at all here. C4 and C5 Mizuki revolve around her burst, which you ideally skip when you can, and C3 is just a minor Stellar Swirl damage bonus increase. C6 is the constellation that is very good. It gives Mizuki a ton of crit value for free basically, as you should very easily hit the trigger conditions for this passive being 1000 DM, and any Stellar Swirl damage that takes place while Mizuki is on field is also getting an additional 40 crit value. So you're getting around a 40% increase from C1 Mizuki, and close to a 60% increase from C0 Mizuki. And yes, that is indeed C6 Mizuki hitting 200k DPS with just a C0 limited character. So if you're wondering what to get from the constellation selector, there's a very obvious choice. And for anyone curious about Mizuki's signature weapon, it's going to be a 10% team DPS increase, but because you lose some crit stats, and Cryo MC is getting a ton of crit value just from existing, in a lot of cases this weapon is going to push Mizuki out of being the #1 Stellar Swirl contributor, which is why her personal damage is taking a dip, but the team's damage is still increasing. That and the fact that having more EM on Mizuki buffs the team more through quills and her skill scaling. So yes, if you have Mizuki's weapon you should use it on her, but I don't think you should go out of your way to pull for it. Anyways, that's enough talk about the Yuma Glorp. To now discuss Sandrone, who's also getting Stellar Swirl scalings, because once again we just don't have good Onimo supports. I guess this gives more longevity to Onimo Stellar Swirl DPSs, but you can't really focus on the reaction damage in this team that much, and instead you really are just trying to boost Sandrone's personal damage as much as possible, and rely on her Stellar Swirl scalings mostly, in which case the team performance you're getting is just okay. This is about as good as Sandrone's Stellar Conduct teams if you just have Yai, or you just have Odette, and if you're wondering how good Stellar Conduct teams are looking, then go watch my last video. But for now, with how scuffed Stellar Swirl setups are, especially for cryo characters, as they can't benefit from the new craftables or artifact sets, this is where I would expect her teams to be. And if we do get a Sucrose upgrade in the future for Stellar Swirl teams, then I do expect Sandrone to shoot up to about her Stellar Conduct performance, maybe a bit lower. But with that, I don't think I have anything else to talk about for right now, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Stellar Swirl teams, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, thank you so much for your continued support. It means the world to me. I love you all, and I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you to everyone else for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.